viewers. Today I'd like to invite you to a party. A goodbye party to someone called Miss Pushpa T.S. By now you may have guessed what the topic of discussion for today is. We shall look into a poem called Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. by Nissim Ezekiel. Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. is a hilarious little poem filled with Indian sentiment and expressions. Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. is a happy little poem. Before we go into the poem in detail, let's know a little bit about Nissim Ezekiel, the poet. Nissim Ezekiel was born on 14th December 1924. He was Indian Jewish poet, playwright, editor and art critic. He was a foundational figure in post-colonial Indian literary history, specifically for Indian writing in English. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy Award in 1983 for his poetry collection Latter-day Psalms by the India's National Academy of Letters. Now let's come back to Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. is a harmless little poem, as I said a couple of minutes ago, where Ezekiel illustrates the Indian way of speaking English with pitch-perfect accuracy, capturing all its nuances, the quirks, the familiar turns of phrase, the bizarre combinations of school book formulas, the shoddy grammar, all find a place here. The poem is woven round a familiar everyday event of life, a farewell party, and Ezekiel deftly uses the voice of the speaker to ridicule the predictable emptiness of talk on such occasions in a very familiar and typically Indian tone of language that every Indian can identify. In fact, we as Indians who live in India know exactly what this little speech sounds like. In fact, with a little effort, we could probably even imagine the way the speaker looks and even perhaps the audience he is speaking to. And I think it's not an exaggeration if I were to say that if good poetry is about finding a voice, then there are very few more charming, more immediately recognizable voices to our ears than that of Ezekiel. In fact, Ezekiel is a father figure, a great personality who has done so much to advance the cause of modern poetry in India. When it comes to writing like this with harmless humor, Ezekiel stands out as the one and the only figure. Now, let me not bar you from enjoying the poem any longer. Let's turn to the poem, Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpa T.S. Friends, our dear sister is departing for foreign in 2-3 days, and we are meeting today to wish her beau voyage. You're all knowing, friends, what sweetness is in Miss Pushpa. I don't mean only external sweetness, but internal sweetness. Miss Pushpa is smiling and smiling even for no reason, but simply because she is feeling. Miss Pushpa is coming from very high family. Her father was a renowned advocate in Balsar or Surat. I am not remembering now which place. Surat? Ah, yes. Once only I stayed in Surat with family members of my uncle's very old friend. His wife was cooking nicely. That was a long time ago. Coming back to Miss Pushpa, she is most popular lady with men and ladies also. Whenever I asked her to do anything, she was saying, "Just now only I will do it." That is showing good spirit. I am always appreciating the good spirit. Pushpa miss is never saying no. Whatever I or anybody is asking, she is always saying yes. And today she is going to improve her prospects, and we are wishing her bon voyage. Now I ask other speakers to speak, and afterwards Miss Pushpa will do the summing up. The poem opens in a straightforward fashion where the speaker announces, rather modestly, without any flamboyance, the purpose of the get-together. That is, to wish bon voyage to Miss Pushpa, who is going abroad. Let's see what the poet says. The French would say this as bon voyage. It simply means a safe journey abroad. Now let's see what is so typically Indian here in these lines. The poet says, "Dear sister." This is a typically Indian way of addressing people as Behan, Bhaiya, Bhabhi, to show that the address is as close to them as their own family. In fact, the addressee is one among their own kith and kin. Also, it's a mark of respect to someone who is older than you are. Okay? It shows intimacy. Okay? And then let's also look at the expression in 2-3 days. This is again typically Indian way of saying, whereas probably a native speaker would say in a day or two or very soon. But the poet says she's departing for foreign in 2-3 days. Again, we Indians say she's going to foreign or she is in foreign instead of saying she's going abroad. Now then let us see what else we have here, where the speaker takes us from here. The speaker now talks about Miss Pushpa's pleasant demeanor, her pleasant appearance and manners, and her gentleness and sweetness as a person. The speaker intends to emphasize that Miss Pushpa is not only genuine and affectionate, but is blessed with innate qualities of kindness and calmness. Let's see what he says. Now let's come to the poem. You are all knowing friends what sweetness is in Miss Pushpa. I don't mean only external sweetness, but internal sweetness. What is external sweetness here? Outward appearance, very pleasant appearance. Some people are very pleasant to look at, to be with. But here, Miss Pushpa is not only a pleasant person to look at, but she also possesses internal sweetness. Now, what is internal sweetness? Innate goodness of heart. Okay, so she's not only pleasant outwardly, but innately she is a very sweet person. That is what the speaker wants to emphasize. But what happens next is rather hilarious. He says, in all his genuine probably feeling for Miss Pushpa is smiling and smiling even for no reason. Now, what does he want to convey here? He wants to tell us that she's a very pleasant person, always smiling, greeting people with a smile on her face. But what he ends up saying is that she smiles even for no reason. Who smiles usually, generally for no reason? Probably mad people or crazy people or people who are a little lost to the world. But this problem of meaning something but conveying something else completely different arises because we Indians think in our mother tongue and speak in English. And he again says she is smiling and smiling even for no reason, but simply because she's feeling. She's feeling what? Feeling itself is supposed to convey the meaning that she's a very genuine person. So, if you look at the poem again, it has quite a few progressive tenses. You are all knowing. We do not generally say in English, you are knowing. We say you know, because for state words like know, love, like, we do not use the progressive tense. For instance, you cannot say, I am believing in God, or I am loving you, or I am liking ice cream. We say, she likes ice cream. He believes in God. She doesn't believe in God. Again, we Indians use more of progressive tense than of the present tense, present simple. And if you notice, the entire poem is filled with such expressions, and that is what contributes to the hilarity of the poem in one sense. So now, what kind of a person is Miss Pushpa? She is very sweet, sweet both outwardly and inwardly, and always very pleasant, helpful. We'll come to what kind of family she comes from in the next stanza. Now, the poet talks about the lineage of Miss Pushpa. Let's see what he says. Miss Pushpa is coming from a very high family. Now, what does he mean by high here? High, actually, he means by the word high, a respectable family, probably a well-educated and a wealthy, well-to-do family. This again is a literal translation from the mother tongue. Probably he meant to say, he was thinking of bahut bada khandan hai unka. So that bahut bada khandan gets translated into English as a high family. And what is her father? Let's read this again. Miss Pushpa is coming from very high family. Notice there is no there. He doesn't indicate a very high family. He says from very high family. Let's read next. Her father was renowned advocate in Balsar or Surat. I am not remembering now which place. He doesn't say was a renowned advocate, because in most Indian languages we do not have the use of the article the, an. So we tend to drop the article. And if you notice, he says, I am not remembering now which place, instead of saying I do not remember from which place. Now, what happens in such contexts when you tend to not remember some details? There are always helpful audiences. So somebody from the audience aids the speaker's memory. This is truly hilarious, because when you forget about something and when somebody aids your memory, you go back to that incident. The speaker here lapses into a reverie about his stay in Surat at a friend's house. He starts recollecting all that. He reminisces a lot about his relative's wife who served him tasty meals. Fortunately for us, and fortunately for Miss Pushpa, he does not go into the details of his stay there. He pauses there for a minute. Probably he goes back to those days. Probably he is even relishing the food that is being served to him. But he quickly comes back to the present and he says, that was long time ago. And then after this lapse into the reverie, he says, coming back to Miss Pushpa, she is most popular lady with men and ladies also. Again, he means to say something, but he ends up saying something else. Notice this. She is most popular lady. Again, the dropping of the article. She is a most popular lady or the most popular lady. She is most popular lady. Who is she popular with? What does popular there mean? Everyone knows about her. Okay? She is most popular lady with men, and probably as an afterthought, because probably he doesn't want people to misread too much meaning into that expression. He says, she is most popular lady with men and ladies also, not just with men but also with women. In the sense, everyone likes her, not only men but also women. She is a very well known person, very helpful, very pleasant, so everyone likes her. Then let us see what else he wants to say about Miss Pushpa. He has already told us that she comes from a very high family, okay, truly educated and wealthy. Probably she has very sound credentials then, okay. So because she comes from a very high family, she is also very good at her workplace. He says, probably it is now time for him to get back to Miss Pushpa's contribution to her workplace. He wants to place on record all the good work that Miss Pushpa has done in her office. Whenever I asked her to do anything, she was saying, just now only I will do it. Very typically Indian way of saying, just now only I will come, ma'am, just now only I will do it, sir, just now only we will do it. That now only is typically Indian. I am sure all of us can really relate to this. We have heard this several times, we have said this several times, so we cannot really think of anything else but for the now only expression there. Just now only I will do it. That is showing good spirit. What does that mean? When somebody asks you for help, requests you for help, you must show that you are a very obliging person. You will attend to their request immediately. That is why he says, just now only, I'll do it immediately for you. That is showing good spirit. So we know that she's a very committed person in her office because she's always obliging. She's always responding to people's requests. She is always responding to, again, typical Indian way of saying. This is showing good spirit. I am always appreciating the good spirit. By the way, the speaker does not hesitate to convey what kind of a good person he is while he is talking about what kind of a good person Miss Pushpa is. He seems to tell us that he is able to identify talent and he is also able to appreciate people who are committed and hardworking, because not everybody recognizes good work when it is done, and not everybody has the grace of heart to acknowledge and place it on record, whereas our speaker has that kind of gracefulness. Speaker now goes on and on about how committed, how sincere a worker Miss Pushpa is, how obliging she is, how willing she is. To show that she is a very committed worker, these are his words. Pushpa Miss is never saying no. Never does she give a negative answer. Always in the affirmative. Whatever I or anybody is asking, again notice the speaker does not say whatever anybody or I ask. He says whatever I or anybody is asking, again is asking, present progressive in the place of asks. And when we include people, when we want to include people in the list of the speakers, we generally say my friend and I, or my cousin and I. We don't say I and my cousin, but again it's typically Indian way of saying I and my friends, but whereas we should be saying my friends and I. So what is the great quality that Miss Pushpa possesses? That she never says no as an answer. She's always saying yes, and today she's going to improve her prospects and we are wishing her bon voyage. So today she's going abroad. Let us wish her a safe trip, also high prospects. Let her, for whatever she's going, probably she's going for higher education or she's going for a better job, whatever it is, let us wish her bon voyage. Now he asks other speakers to speak. And he says, now I ask other speakers to speak, and afterwards Miss Pushpa will do the summing up. So the speaker winds up his speech by saying that there are others who are lined up who would want to speak, who would want to place on record their feelings for Miss Pushpa. So there is probably, he doesn't want to hijack everybody's time. So he invites others, and then he says, after everyone else, whoever wants to speak, Miss Pushpa will address the gathering. And this is how he ends his speech. Now let us come to a little bit of appreciation of the poem. Let's pick out certain typically Indian expressions here. Departing for foreign, instead of saying she's going abroad. 2-3 days, instead of saying in a day or two. And of course, the use of the present progressive for words like know, believe, etc. You're all knowing, he says. That's the second thing. And thirdly, this poem is full of progressive tenses where simple present tense should have been used. The speaker uses the present progressive. For example, in fact, there are number of examples here. Miss Pushpa is smiling and smiling because she's feeling. Miss Pushpa is coming from very high family. And then when he talks about his friend's wife, he says, his wife was cooking nicely, Miss Pushpa is always saying yes. Again, we are wishing her bon voyage. So many progressive examples of progressive tense here we find. And as I said before, the speaker drops the indefinite article because we don't have, it's a feature that we do not find in Indian languages. Both in content and sentiment, we said this poem reflects Indian feelings. So if we look at the poem again, we'll find that this poem is characteristically Indian in its language expression. In the sense, there are quite a few examples of dropping the article, then using the present progressive for expressing state words. Then there is an excessive and inappropriate use of the present progressive. There are other expressions like I and my colleagues, whereas we should be saying my colleagues and I. Lots of typically Indian expressions here we find. However, we should not underestimate or devalue the difficulty of writing a piece like Miss Pushpa T.S. because it can be very hurting, it can be very offending to people when they read this poem because it highlights the inappropriate use of language. So it takes a lot of deftness and craft to conceive a poem of this kind and present it in a way that it does not hurt people. And that is where Ezekiel stands out as a distinct person. Because it's not after all easy to get people to laugh at themselves. For this, we just don't need an exceptionally gifted and observant ear, but also a very carefully crafted language to write like this. Okay? We also need a considerable amount of talent to manage just the right balance of satire, wit, and good humor to make this funny, to make this hilarious and yet not offending, because it is funny as well as bereft of any sting. It doesn't hurt you. He has robbed it of its sting. So you can laugh with the speaker, but you're not laughing at the speaker. You're one with the speaker, you in fact enjoy, you can relate to it. Ah yes, this is how we all speak English. And what's wrong with it, by the way, in any case, because this is Indian English, right? And in the wake of the idea of world Englishes, what is important now is not probably perfectness of language, not Miltonius kind of language or even Shakespearean language. What is important is intelligibility. Are we able to convey what we want to convey in a way that the speaker understands us or not? If we are able to do that, it really doesn't matter whether it is Indian English or African English or Australian English. However, to write like this, as we said, takes a lot of effort because it is hilarious, at the same time it is not offending. In fact, it would take very little to make this poem outright offensive, but in Ezekiel's subtle hands and deft handling, it is genial, charming, a poem delivered with a smile and a wink of the eye. I am sure all of us have enjoyed reading this and being a party to the party to Miss Pushpa T.S. Thank you.